Joining me today on GHC Coffee Break will be Sam Baltzer, a professor at Georgia Highlands. Get your coffee. We'll be right back.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
Welcome to GHC Coffee Break. I'm really excited about my guest today, Professor Sam Baltzer from Georgia Highlands College. I love music. I'm very eclectic in my music. But April is Jazz Appreciation Month, which is really cool to me. Before we really get talking, though, about the jazz appreciation, I would like for our audience to know a little bit about you. You are a professor at Georgia Highlands College.
That's right.
Of music, to be specific. And also, I understand there's some kind of exciting news. I believe Rome Symphony director, maybe?
Maybe. Yeah, a month ago, I was appointed the new director of the Rome Symphony.
That's awesome.
So right now, I'm working on planning out a season, picking concerts and picking music and dates and venues, and then I'll begin conducting in September.
Wow.
I'm really looking forward to it.
That sounds exciting. I'm sure you will get news at Georgia Highlands on what's coming up and all that good stuff.
I'm sure word will get out.
But I also believe you've worked with our bands with the basketball games.
Yes, I work with several bands in town, but when I came to Highlands 3 years ago, I started a group called the Highlanders. And the Highlanders is a jazz slash rock slash pep band. We play for the basketball games at Georgia Highlands, and then we do other kind of performances around the area.
That's neat. And they're just a different group of people and friends that got together.
Yes. We have just a couple of Georgia Highlands students in the group. We'd love to add more students, but we fill out the band with community volunteers, people that just love to play music. And so we rehearse once a week and perform around mostly for charitable events and social community events. And so it's fun. It's fun.
And I think if you're a lover of music, I play clarinet in the high school marching band, and I think if I picked up a clarinet now, it would go.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those instruments you really have to. Just because of the reed instrument. I sat there the other day trying to think, can I even remember how to play my notes?
You know, Rome is a musical town. There are just a lot of people in town that played music in high school or played in college and want to keep playing. So we have a large group of community members who play music in one form or another, either play with the orchestra or play with the Northwest Georgia Winds, play with the Clock Tower Jazz Ensemble, or play in a variety of, garage bands, and so it's Rome is very active.
I love it. I'm trying to learn to play the banjo. My stepdad, he's blind from retinitis pigmentosus. But he's trying to teach me, and because he plays the guitar, the bass. I think that's one of your instruments is the bass, and just how much fun it is. And we do not so much anymore, but there's a garage band in Douglasville that he's a part of, and he's also a part of a Christian band group. I guess it would be a group because it's the singers and the band. But I think people really, as we grow up, and you and I were talking before the show about the music that we listen to even today. What did you say?
I told you before we went on air that I read or heard recently that the music we listened to when we were 14 years old is the music that sticks with us throughout our lifetime. Now we may add an appreciation for other kinds of music, but that's kind of the music that's in our hearts.
And it makes sense because when you said that, and I think back to 14, a little harder now, but I think you're right because I love country music. I grew up, and my dad played guitar and sang, and it was country, the old country. Now, country is not quite country as much as country used to be. More of almost a pop or rockish tone to it, which again, the evolution of music.
Well, every type of music has many different styles within it. So in country, there are many different kinds of country. In jazz, there are many different kinds of jazz.
That's where we were heading with this.
Jazz has evolved over the last 120 years. So there are many different jazz styles, and I think there's a jazz style for pretty much everybody. Some people, when they think of jazz, they think of Louis Armstrong and Dixieland. Some people, when they think of jazz, they think of Glenn Miller and swing.
Swing. I didn't even think about swing when I was first doing some research. I love swing.
Some people think of Duke Ellington and Count Basie. Some people think of Dave Brubeck when they think of jazz, or they think of Wynton Marsalis or some of the current players today. So jazz has evolved and has a rich history of different kinds of jazz.
And I think, because as I was looking through some of the information, ragtime, I guess I didn't realize it was kind of a subgroup of jazz, the ragtime, the swing, the Dixieland.
Ragtime is kind of one of those bridge types of music.
Okay.
It has one foot in classical music, because ragtime, for the most part, was originally all written out, note for note. It was not improvised in any way.
Okay.
And there were trained composers writing ragtime pieces. Louis Gottschalk and Scott Joplin. And then ragtime style kind of evolved into the early Dixieland jazz style.
Okay.
And that early jazz style was really a blending of African American influences and European instruments. And so it was a real mix, and it only could have happened in America.
That's what made the history of looking at jazz so interesting, is how it evolved and the instruments that came into play.
We talk about today in the news, you hear a lot of talk about the value of America's diversity. And we're one of the most diverse countries on the planet. And one of the benefits of that was jazz. Jazz would not have emerged in a country without the diversity that America had. It was really, like I said, a blending of European and African influences, and it only could have happened in America.
I agree.
But now, jazz is worldwide. Jazz is one of America's gifts to the world, and there are strong jazz programs in Japan and in Russia and in China and all over the world. Well,
I remember a movie that came out many years ago, but it was called Swing Kids.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that?
I don't think I have.
Great movie, World War II. Young men in Germany that were swing. Of course, Benny Goodman and the jazz influence from America, and it was prohibited, of course, in Germany at this time. And the influence of these kids that got together and had this swing time jazz, the black market records that they were not supposed to have, and even the clubs.
Jazz grew up in bars and brothels in southern cities.
Vaudeville, right?
Well, it dispersed to the country through a lot of means. Maybe vaudeville was one of those, but jazz in its early days had kind of an unsavory reputation because of the venues in which it was played. Now, the musicians were not unsavory. The musicians were serious musicians interested in developing their artistic talent. But they were forced to play in these less than reputable venues, and so jazz got kind of that reputation as being kind of naughty music, and it took a long time to grow out of that. That image of jazz was even came out even more during the Prohibition, when jazz kind of went underground. And jazz was the music of speakeasies and these underground clubs. When Prohibition was repealed in, 1932 or 3, jazz came out of the dark and began to be played in large hotel ballrooms. And since jazz began to be played in these larger venues, the bands had to get bigger, because this is before PA systems. If you wanted a louder band, you had to add more instruments. And so with the growth of the size of the bands, it was more important that the arrangements were all worked out, because you couldn't have everybody improvising at the same time when you have 15 people on stage. And so then the arranger became a very important person. Okay. And then it became important that the musicians would have a little more schooling, a little more training, because much of the music then began to be written down. And so jazz evolved partly through these social changes as well.
And I look at, and I know that it's not just in the music arena, it was in various arenas. You have someone like Louis Armstrong. You know, this is a very prominent black male in the jazz field, and the roadblocks at times that they had to do certain venues because he was black.
Right, right. Well, as they traveled around, it was hard to find lodging,
right.
hard to find restaurants, and so on. Musicians are integrated, I think, much quicker than the rest of society.
Absolutely.
Musical groups integrated before professional baseball and before, the Army, before other large institutions integrated. Because in music, we don't care what a person looks like. We just care if a person can play.
Exactly.
Can you play? And so the jazz groups integrated in the 1930s to some extent. Now it was small. There was some integration in the 30s, but more and more. And jazz was one of the leaders in that area.
Yeah, I think, and I was telling you earlier, I know Wikipedia is not the best place to get all your good information, but when I was looking up some history, they did on the side, as you scroll down, had various clips, little audio clips, so that you could hear the different, as you said, the diversity of the music. I think you said many people go, oh, I don't know that I like jazz, but if you really start to think about it, what would you say? There's a jazz flavor for everybody. I really think that's true. Jazz has changed so much over the last 120 years, but all of those earlier styles are still with us. So people are still playing jazz in the style of the 19-teens, and still playing jazz in the style of the 1920s and 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s. Those styles are all still with us. And so as new styles of jazz emerge, even today, the old styles stay with us. It's like going to a classical concert to hear an orchestra play. You might hear music that was written 300 years ago, or 200 years ago, or 100 years ago, or 10 years ago. All of those earlier musical styles in the classical world are still with us, and the same thing's true in jazz. So there's a jazz for everybody. Well, and I wouldn't have really, like I said, thought about it until after I started listening. And I admit my ignorance of the jazz music, because like I said, my station kind of stays on one of the country stations, but to look, I believe, wasn't blues also part of this?
Blues was a big part of the development of jazz, and jazz musicians still play blues. Blues is one of those styles of music, or one of those forms of music is what it really is, that people across the different genres of music play. They play blues in country music, they play blues in rock, they play blues in jazz. There are some classical pieces of music that are based loosely on the blues.
Interesting.
So the blues is actually a musical form that can be played in a lot of different styles.
Interesting. Well, we have to take a break.
Okay.
Guys, get your coffee. We'll be right back.
I'm transferring to the University of West Georgia.
Columbia University.
Kennesaw State.
UGA.
Loyola University in Chicago.
Grambling State.
Shorter University. I'm going to Greensboro College, and we all got our start at Georgia Highlands.
No matter where your educational journey takes you, you can get your start at Georgia Highlands College. Georgia Highlands College. Enroll, engage, excel.
Welcome back to GHC Coffee Break. I am so glad again that Professor Sam Baltzer is here with us. I've always loved music, and this is not exactly a jazz story, but I feel like music is very therapeutic. Any kind of music, depending on what you, as you said, what you like to listen to. But I guess it was probably 1984 or 5-ish. I was at Georgia State working on my bachelor's or master's degree. I can't remember because I stayed in the same place and had some of the same teachers. But one of our teachers, he talked about music, and he invited us to his home to listen to music, and it was dealing with grief. And one of he played Mahler. And I believe his son had died, if I'm remembering my story right. But he played this piece of music, and at that time I really wasn't into classical music too much. My husband loves it, and I was just kind of okay, it's okay for a little bit. But as I listened to the movement of the music, I wish I was a dancer, because I could almost just see this whole choreography of this life that was speaking through his music. And I think that that's true whether it's classical, jazz. When you watch the people play their music in jazz and other instruments as well, or other genres as well, they just seem their heart. So it's really that emotional release.
In jazz, there are really two key elements to all of jazz. One of those is the element of improvisation, being able to make up music on the spot. And jazz musicians do that by the use of scales. So in jazz, we look at the chord, and every chord implies a scale, and you use those scales to build your improvisation on. So the scale gives you a set of notes that you can use to craft a brand new piece of music on the spot. And since jazz is largely improvised, it's spontaneous, and you never quite know what's going to happen. It'll be a little bit different each time we play an arrangement. It'll be a little bit different.
See, that's amazing. And
so that allows the player to project their personality, their skill level, and so it keeps jazz very fresh. So that's one of the key elements of jazz, is that element of improvisation. The other key element in jazz is the element of swing. In a lot of musical styles, especially in like rock and pop styles, there's a steady beat, and we divide that beat into twos. Boom, boom, bop, boom, 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 bop, boom, 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 bop, boom, boom. So we get a basic rock rhythm like that. But in jazz, we'll divide that beat into threes. A boo ba da da ba da do ba da da ba da do ba da da ba da do da ka do ka da da ka da do ba da da, and that gives music a completely different feel.
Oh, it felt different even as you did it. That's cool.
And we call that a swing feel. A swing feel is when all of the beats become a triplet, and so that style of music was introduced in the 1920s and 30s. And it became one of the hallmarks of the jazz style. The new dances of the 1920s and 30s are swing dances, because they're dances meant to be danced to that triple beat, that triple feel.
Oh, it's fast. I've watched people swing dance, and it's like, whew, that's so cool.
Now you can do that triple feel at different tempos. You can do it slow. So Sentimental Journey. Dun 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 dun. There's a triplet, and even though it's a slow beat, And you can also triple feel a fast beat. Chattanooga choo-choo. You get that triple beat at a fast speed. So the tempo can be fast or slow, but the hallmark in jazz, one of the hallmarks, is that triple feel or swing feel that we call it. So you know the song, It Don't Mean a Thing If It Ain't Got That Swing?
I love that song. It's
a great song. And what it's referring to is that triple feel. Because at that time, you know, if you were playing music in that 2 division, you were considered maybe not so hip.
Okay.
So that's what that song is all about. You got to swing the rhythm to be cool.
You gotta go. You gotta rent or whatever. You've got to find Netflix Swing Kids.
Okay.
I think you'll really enjoy it because
I'll have to look for that.
That's and he sings that song. You know, one of the guys. He's always doing that, and it's just like I love the song anyway. And it makes you feel good. But I think as you were talking, it just hit me that listening to the tempo and the differences of how that mood can either bring you up, and I don't want to say take you down, but make you kind of that mournful.
Music can express emotions, the whole spectrum of emotions. Music can express sadness, and it can also express joy. And you know, each one of us interprets music a little differently, and I think that's the value of music, that it speaks to each person on an individual level. We say music is a universal language, but it's not a specific language. So music means something, which I guess makes it a language, but it means something different to every person. And it can even mean different things to the same person at different times. So music is that powerful communication tool, and it as you mentioned, it's therapeutic. It has so many values on so many different levels, and those values are even more powerful when the music is performed live. When you're right there in the room and you watch the musicians breathe and you watch them move with their instruments, it's a much more powerful experience than when we listen to music, you know, on the radio or on our boombox or something.
I think it was, oh God, this is going to sound terrible. I'm very eclectic in my movies too. Ringo Starr, many years ago, played in a movie I think called Caveman, and how they stumbled upon music. I don't know if you've seen that one or not.
I seem to recall it. I don't know if I ever saw it, but that sounds familiar.
But you know, they were cavemen, obviously, and how they accidentally found music. He was doing something, and then it was like, you know, they were blowing on something and it made that deep, you know, almost like a baritone kind of voice sound.
Like a didgeridoo kind of a thing.
Yeah, and then you had somebody hit a drum or bones, dinosaur bones.
Yeah.
Clunk.
Well, if Ringo Starr is involved, you know, drums are going to get in there somehow. So, well, every musical culture that's ever been discovered, every musical culture that exists today on the planet, and every musical culture throughout historical time that we've been able to find has evidence of music. No matter how primitive or how advanced, no matter whether it's urban or rural or, you know, where it is, music is part of every culture we've ever found. So it must speak to something deep within us.
It has to, yeah.
Because, you know, we don't need music to survive. So, you know, we could live our lives without it, but it must provide something very, very enriching and something very meaningful for it to be part of every culture.
I teach sociology, and as you were speaking of the symbolic interaction perspective, just hits me because words and language, we provide meaning to it, and like you said, what means one thing, and even our country, like the bonnet, I think of that when I talk to students. I'm going to look under your bonnet. In America, we're going, what? Look under the hood. So those cultural meanings are social, but there's also that individual, like you said, as you listen to the music, what does it mean to you? And I agree, it has to be something. It's not a survival need of music, but most people listen. I don't think I know anybody that just will say, I don't listen to any music.
Yeah. Well, music is one of those pathways to aesthetic experiences those aesthetic experience is an experience that's deeply personal, and it's very rich and meaningful. It's those experiences that add real depth to our lives. And music is one pathway to those kind of experiences. But we have to be open to it. You have to focus and immerse yourself in the music. Many times we use music as background noise. We listen to music as we're doing housework or we're driving in the car, but to sit in a concert hall or sit in a musical venue where you can just immerse yourself and stay focused on the music, it can be very profound. Very, very, very powerful experience. And we listen to music differently depending on the type of music too. So some people ask me sometimes if I like hip hop, and I can appreciate hip hop. It wouldn't be my favorite kind of music, but I can listen to it and enjoy it. But I have to listen to hip hop differently than I listen to classical music. I tell my students it's like going to a baseball game. And if you go to a baseball game expecting to see someone kick field goals, you're going to be really disappointed because the rules are different. And so listening to hip hop is a different set of rules than listening to classical music or listening to country or rock. They all have their own kind of rule set. And if you listen with those ears, if you listen with your country ears, you can enjoy country. And if you listen with your hip hop ears, you can appreciate hip hop. Or you listen to your classical ears. Classical music and jazz actually are both very subtle forms of music, or they can be very subtle. And so to appreciate the subtlety takes a lot of focus, and you got to listen with intention to get the most out of it. Pop and rock are not as subtle. So we can listen to those kind of musics when we're doing other things or with just half of our attention. But jazz and classical music are both really significant art forms, so they're deep.
Yeah, and just even having this conversation, as much as I've loved music over the years, and like I said, I played in high school, literally just played. I played clarinet and marching band, but I never really looked at it that way. I bet you're a great teacher. I would love to take a class because you really made me look at music from a different way, even though I love it. But it's been really interesting, and I hopefully we can even get some people to come volunteer and be a part of the Highlanders or other things you're doing.
I would love to have them, and like to encourage everyone to come out to live musical events, whether it's the Rome Symphony or the Northwest Georgia Winds or the Highlanders or a group of your own choice.
That sounds great.
Make music part of your life.
Awesome. All right, get your coffee. We'll be right back.
Hi, may I please have an application? Thank you.
Skip the drama. Get your diploma.
Okay.
Take that first step towards a better future. Find free adult education classes at finishyourdiploma.org.
All right, Sam. Welcome back to GHC Coffee Break.
It's been a pleasure.
It has. It absolutely.
Any chance to talk about music, I'll take it.
Of course. We have about 25 seconds. I would like for you to take us out with listing different types or composers or artists of jazz.
We'll start with different types of jazz. Let me see. So ragtime, Dixieland, swing, bebop, cool jazz, Latin jazz, free jazz, big band jazz, Afro jazz, jazz rock, country rock, country swing, Texas swing. Let me see. Eclectic jazz. There's this and this and this.
Jazz musicians.
of musicians from, well, you mentioned Billie Holiday and Louis Armstrong and Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker and Art Tatum and, oh my gosh, the list goes on.
I wanted it just kind of drone out till we got, that was awesome. But yeah, that's neat. But I've always loved,